Welcome back to the Cryptic Lair. Today I thought I would put out another of the tricks that I use. I've heard from people, and this is from some of my more formal classical woodworking training in the background. You know, there's sort of a distance and tolerance to tools that we just can't go much below that, and that we shouldn't really be thinking in machinist terms when it comes to woodworking. But here's the things, in puzzle building, you often have to think in very, very small increments. You have to be moving things by tiny bits. And, you know, I've heard in the past people tell me, well, you can't adjust your table saw, you know, a thousandth of an inch at a time. And it's, you know, most people don't work less than a 64th of an inch, you know, so why would you ever need to move that much? But sometimes our puzzle pieces, they just require that tiny bit of shaving. And I found that there are ways to do this in using a number of machinist tricks. So I think looking at the machinist world is a great way to get some hints and tips for how we can work better when we're making puzzles. Sure, you're making a large armoire, usually don't have to worry about being less than a 64th of an inch. Tiny puzzle pieces, yeah, you often do. So one problem I often face is that I'll be cutting here on my table saw, and I'll have set things up just as good as I can with a ruler. And yeah, I might be within a 64th of an inch at that point in time. You know, make a couple of test cuts against the fence with my sled, something like that. Check my pieces with the calipers and find they're just still a little bit off. So I might need to move a piece very, very tiny amount. So the question is, how can we easily do that? So I've got in front of me two pieces I use regularly. One is my magnetic base here, and I have my dial indicator sitting on it. We're actually going to use this with and without the dial indicator to show two different ways. And I've also got a little set of setup blocks. I got these from Lee Valley, just get them off their website. They're not too expensive, and they are super, super helpful. These are just blocks that are accurately machined to specific sizes. You know, so you know it's going to be this size. I've checked mine with my dial calipers. We're within, you know, 1/1000th of an inch. So, you know, for me, that's close enough. You know, I'm still not talking in true machinist terms. There are some, you know, tolerances I don't need to hit, but I'd like to get as close as I can. So one thing that might happen is we're cutting away. You know, we've set our fence in place. You know, we've locked it down, made our cut, and realized we're maybe still just something like maybe a 1/16th of an inch too thick. So what I want to do is try to move this fence in by 1/16th of an inch. So now we could get a ruler out. We could try to use the tape that's on the saw, but that's usually never going to be all that good. But one of these can make our life a lot easier, because I know this is an accurate 1/16th of an inch thick. Now the question is, how do we move the fence just this amount? So that's where the magnetic base comes in handy. So what I'm going to do is set this little piece right up against my fence. I'm going to take my magnetic base, just going to slide it in, and then turn the stop on so that this is now locked in place. So it's not going to go anywhere. So now at this point, I can unlock my fence. I can take my 1/16th of an inch piece away, bring my fence over. Now mine, I always like to get partially locked. I can still move it just a little, but it straightens the fence out because there is a little bit of play in it. Bring it right up against my stop, tighten it down, take my base away. Now I've moved 1/16th of an inch. And you can get these in lots of different increments. You could even pick up things like feeler gauges from your average home store, automotive store. They're going to take you down to you know 0.0015, you know, really small increments, and you can just use those to do fence positioning. You know, obviously, if you need to push your fence out, you would just set up your piece on the opposite side of the fence and go that way. You know, you do have to be on the metal part in order for the magnetic bases to work, but you know, we're usually making puzzles, not furniture, so we're not worried about going too big. Now, the other thing you can do, if you happen to have a dial indicator, and if you're getting into puzzle making, these are really invaluable, along with things like a digital caliper for checking sizes and making really small movements. So if you have one of these, what I can do is I can take my indicator and I'm just going to lower it so I get down. What I can do is I can take this, I'm going to push it against my fence so that I've actually depressed the plunger a little bit. And I'm going to go ahead and lock my magnetic base down. Okay, I've got this in nice and close, so you should be able to see the dials. So what I would do is take my dial, set it to 0, so that I now know that my fence is zeroed out on here. Now I can unlock the fence, and you'll often see a little motion in the dial because there is just a little bit of spring back and play in the fences. But at this point, now not unlocking my fence all the way, but I could take this and just start to tap it slightly. And that is, as I move across my dial, 5/1000ths. I can lock it back down. Sometimes there will be a little bit of that spring, so I'll have to go just a tiny bit past it, lock it in, and I've now moved my fence 5/1000ths of an inch in. So extremely small motions that you can make by testing with these dial indicators. And there are lots of different bars and configurations you can get to attach these to. I could even make a piece that slides here in my slot that the dial indicator sits on, and that I can move in and out to adjust the fence that way. So lots of different possibilities. And since I know I put this at 0, I could also go in the other direction. So I could set it there. And since I had the plunger depressed slightly, I could actually tap the other way. And now I've moved out just about 10/1000ths. So again, I'm making very small, tiny bits of changes. So this is a great help for me when I do need to do very small, very accurate setups on the saw, and a good way to just think, really accurately and know that you're getting the cut that you're looking for.